Hello, this is Sandy Gallagher welcoming you back into Thinking into Results. So now that you've spent time creating your worthy goals and you have an idea of what you want, how do you get there? What's the next step? I've discovered that often we go through life without conscious awareness. We're literally programmed to act, think, and behave in a certain way. And those habits become a part of our essence as human beings from a very early age. And that's why most people aren't doing what they really want to be doing. So if you want to change your results, you need to change your mind and think in a different way. Bob Proctor has spent over 50 years studying human behavior and potential. And through his experience and his knowledge, he'll guide you to a new way of thinking, and he'll help you close the gap between what you know and what you do. And you will be amazed at how different your world looks when you start to change your paradigms. You're on your way to understanding you a lot better, and when you open the door to new paradigms, results will begin to show up. The results that you want.
Hello there, we're back again. And the idea that I'm going to share with you could be, without question, one of the most profitable ideas that you ever focus your attention on. I'm sure you do focus your attention on this at times, but it may be more like a passing thought, like a thief in the night. It just keeps on going. And what we want to do is bring our conscious attention to bear on this, focus on it for a few minutes. It's about the knowing-doing gap. There's an enormous difference between what most people know and what they do. Now, when I say most people, I could say almost all people. Because we have been conditioned, we've been raised, it's passed along genetically, it's certainly a part of our early conditioning in our little life. Our whole educational system is based on getting people to know things. We're given books. We study the books. The professor covers what's in the book. And then we're asked questions about what's in the book, and if we remember the answer to the questions, we're going to get a passing grade. And if we do that often enough, we could end up with a degree. And we could be wandering around an encyclopedia of knowledge and yet not be a very effective human being. Some of the most brilliant people in the world never make things happen. And then for some strange reason, you'll find another individual who may be functionally illiterate. They don't know how to read or write, and yet they're multimillionaires. They build multinational organizations. Now, why is that and how does it happen? Well, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the two parts of our mind. The one part that gathers information, and that's the part that school focuses on from a very early age. And people gather information, but they don't necessarily do what they know how to do. And we find as we get older, this gap seems to get wider because we know more and we seem to do less. Now, do you know, that causes enormous amounts of frustration in a person's life. That frustration then is expressed in all kinds of behavioral patterns that is not conducive to profit in an organization or good results in a person's life. And so this is a lesson that everyone, regardless of what they're doing, should pay quite a bit of attention to. To start off, let's go back to the time when we're just little boys or little girls. I remember when I was a little kid, my mother would say, "Bob, why did you do that?" I'd say, "I don't know." See, I was doing things I didn't want to do. It was giving me results I didn't want to get, and yet I was doing them anyway. And then when I was faced with the problem, "Why did you do that?" I'd say, "I don't know." And my mother would say, "You know better?" "I know." "Why'd you do it?" "I don't know." And of course, this progressed on through school. All my school teachers, you know, from time to time, they'd say, "Bob, why did you do that?" And I didn't know. They'd say, "Well, you know better." "I know." "Why'd you do it?" "I don't know." Now, I went into the Canadian Navy as a fairly young man, and this caused me some trouble. Commanding officers would say, "Proctor," and I'd, "Yes, sir." "Why'd you do that?" I don't know." They say, "What do you mean you don't know? You know better." "I know." "Well, why'd you do it?" "I don't know." well, I'm going to teach you a lesson, and I'd be punished. They may fine me or have me do some kind of punishment, and I would grade out and do it again. They'd say, Proctor, how many times do you have to be told not to do this? I don't know, sir. What do you mean you don't know? You know better. I know. Well, this went on to different jobs. When I got out of the Navy, I got married. My wife said, why'd you do that? And I'd say, stop it right there. See, I was doing things I did not want to do. It was giving me results I did not want to get, and I was doing them anyway. Stop and think of the number of people that go on a diet, and they see that piece of cake, and they know they shouldn't eat it, and they don't want the results it's going to give them, but they eat the cake, and somebody say, I thought you were on a diet. I am. Well, why'd you do that? I don't know. Now think about this. Do you know that corporations in America spend over $60 billion in a year helping people know more? That's really what training is. We're training them to know. It's not, most of it's not experiential training. It's gathering information. You see, it's part of our conditioning. All the way through school, gather information, sit them in a classroom, give them more information. That's what we're doing right here. But this is information that is going to solve a problem for you that most people carry to their grave. You see, there are two parts to our mind. Now, I know psychologists, psychiatrists will say there's many parts to our mind, and that's probably very true. But there's two parts we want to focus on. There's the conscious mind. That's referred to as the educated mind. The educated mind, the conscious mind, gathers information. We read the book, we remember what's in the book, we answer questions, and we pass the exam. See, we read it, remember it, and repeat it. But that doesn't mean that we're going to do it. The part of our mind that gathers information is the conscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind is the part of the mind that causes this thing that we live in, what we call our body, to do what it does. And it's our behavior that's going to determine our results. So we figure that out, and we try to get people to change their behavior. If you don't go to the primary cause of results, there's not going to be any permanent change. When you do go to the primary cause of results, then there's permanent change. So you have to ask yourself, why do they behave as they do? And that answer rests in the person's subconscious mind. It's in what we call the paradigm. Now, the paradigm is that section in our subconscious mind that gathers habits. A habit is nothing but an idea fixed in a person's subconscious mind that causes them to do something without any conscious thought. We all have an enormous number of habits. When we get up in the morning, there's sort of a routine that we move into. And we just automatically start doing things. Stop and think of people in your business. Some of them come in late. They're always late. You chastise them, you may have a talk to them about it, and they're probably on time for a couple of days, but the next thing you know, they're late. And they've always got an excuse, and it's a good excuse, but it's never the reason why they're late. They are programmed to run late. That's what they're programmed to do. Now, there's somebody else that's always early. That's part of their paradigm. They're always there early. They're sitting ready, to get the meeting underway. They're there early. You ever looked at that? Let's stop and think of salespeople. There's millions of dollars spent in sales training, but there's not a lot of great salespeople. Anybody can be, but not everybody is. So we train the people and we show them how to do things, and then they don't do it. See, people know how to make presentations, they know how to overcome objections, they know how to close the sale, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it. This goes on and on and on. You go into a factory or you go into an office, and you're going to find people that are performing way below the level that they should perform at. You see, knowing is not enough. Results are the name of the game. By their fruit you'll know them was good advice. The results always tell an interesting story. They tell where the person is programmed. Now, when a person comes to work with me, I start asking a series of questions. And what I want to find out is, how are you programmed? One of the first things I'll ask people is, what's the most you've ever earned? That gives me an idea of where their mind is programmed with respect to money. I want to try and get some kind of a handle on their history. And there's a pattern to it, and that's all caused by the paradigm. Well, you see, if we start to understand the paradigm, we start to understand the power of habit, when we start to understand how this subconscious mind is literally programmed, that's when we can start to change it. Now, that is a baby that's arriving on the scene, a brand new baby. Now, whatever's going on around that baby goes right into that baby's subconscious mind. All the ideas, all the thoughts that are going on around the child go right into that baby's subconscious mind. Now, when the baby arrived, they were already programmed. That's genetic conditioning. Stop and think of this for a moment. Most of the food you eat, you did not decide you liked. It was given to you before you had any conscious ability to make a decision, some kind of a critical decision, do you like this or not? You see, we are given food that our parents like. That's what we get. Why do they like it? Well, they were given food their parents like. You'd have to go a long way back in the family tree to find out who made the decision for you to do many of the things you're doing. And you say, oh, I don't believe that. Well, if you study it for just a very short period of time, you're not only going to believe it, it's going to be very obvious to you. Well, you see, these habits are passed along from one generation to the next. So when we arrive on the scene, when we make our great debut on planet Earth, we're already programmed. We're programmed. That's why we look so much like our relatives. Our body is an instrument of the mind. So here we are now. We arrive on the scene, and the subconscious mind is wide open. Whatever's going on around that baby goes right into that baby's subconscious mind. And it's repetition that fixes the idea in the subconscious mind. Carl Menninger from the Menninger Foundation down in Topeka said something one time that is very, very important and very true. He said environment is more important than heredity. In other words, the people we're surrounded by have more to do with who we are than what's built into the genes at birth. Now, the baby doesn't have any choice about the environment. They did not choose where they were going to be born. They're just here. And they're being programmed. And that programming goes on for the first 2 or 3 years until the baby starts to consciously think for themselves. But at that time, the programming is pretty well set. And so as energy flows to and through us, the thinking is already there. You see, the person's programmed to think in a certain way. Now, the paradigm is what causes us to behave as we do. Now, we start then at an early age gathering information. We gather more information. And that information is all loaded up in the conscious mind. But rarely does a person do anywhere near what they know how to do. You see, your conscious mind makes decisions. We make decisions based on all kinds of different factors. But, you know, the decisions we make are generally not carried out. We sit in meetings and we decide we're going to do things. We spend all kinds of time strategizing. But frequently the strategy is not executed. Why is that? It's because of the paradigms. Now, if we sat down and we're very open and honest about our paradigms and take a look at our behavioral patterns, we'll say, well, I know I'm not going to do that because I'm not programmed to do it. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to change the programming. Now, that's what this program is all about. That's what thinking into results is about. See, thinking by itself will not change results. You've got to internalize the thinking, and as you internalize the thinking, and it's done through repetition, it's done through a process, the paradigm is changed, the behavior changed, and the results changed. That's what got me into this industry many, many years ago. I went from earning $4,000 a year to over $1 million, and it was almost like that. It was such a shocking change in results, I had to know why. Most people would have been satisfied with the results. I wasn't. I was happy about the results, but I had to know why I changed as I did. See, I had no formal education to speak of. I had a couple of months high school. I had absolutely no business experience. I had a fairly bad attitude when I first got into this, and yet my whole world changed. Built a company that operates all over the world. How does that happen? Well, you see, I learned that most of the things we're taught are not true. I was raised to believe that if you don't have a good formal education, you cannot win. That's not true. I don't have a good formal education, but I've won. Now think about this for a moment. If you don't have business experience, you can't win. Well, that's not true. I didn't have any business experience, and I built a company in Canada, the U.S., and in England. How did that happen? Well, you see, it's because these things happened that I had to start to study this. I want to know what happened to me. Well, you see, I had changed this paradigm. I didn't know what I had done. I was what you call an unconscious competent. Do you know that most people that are real high performers in an organization, the organization doesn't know what they're doing? What do they do that is so different? How come these hard chargers are doing such a good job? Some of the largest companies in the world that I've worked for have spent an absolute fortune shadowing their top performers, trying to figure out what are they doing so different. They operate with a different paradigm. Most people don't know. I had a gentleman come up to me one time in the Waldorf Astoria, a great big guy, and he said, Bob, he said, I've really got to thank you. It was a 3-day seminar. He said, this is the first time I've understood what I did. And I said, well, what did you do? He said, I won the gold medal in the decathlon in the Olympics in Melbourne, Australia in 1957. His name was Milt Campbell. Milt and I became very good friends. But he said, I never understood what I had actually done. We take a look at people that are performing, very, very high performers, and we're thinking, how are they doing it? Some of them aren't that bright. Some of them haven't gathered that much knowledge. You see, we say bright because of the knowledge they've gathered, but gathering the knowledge isn't going to give them the results. Now, I'm not saying you don't need knowledge, you do. And because I didn't go to school, I'm not anti-education. I think education is almost sacred. All my kids went to school. See, I just changed question in our home. I didn't ask if they were going to go. I asked them where they were going to go. So what we have to do, we have to ask ourselves, why do people behave as they do, and why don't they behave the way they want? I want you to stop and think of the knowledge that some of the people in your organization have, and then take a look at their performance and say, now, how can we close this knowing-doing gap? Because that's what this is all about. When you watch a person move, study them, watch the way they move, you're going to find that their behavior is habitual. It is habitual. And start to understand that the knowledge they're holding or gathered, it's not controlling what they're doing. Their paradigm's controlling what they're doing. Listen to the conversations that are going on. See, to call a person into your office and say, Harry or Betty, your performance just isn't going to cut it. And they'll say, well, tell me what I have to do and I'll change it. See, I know this because I've been called into the office. And I promised, you give me one more chance and I'll change. And I meant it. But I didn't change. You see, the person I was working for didn't understand it. It was my paradigm that was causing me to perform the way I was. And I didn't understand it either. So here we had two ignorant people trying to change the performance of an individual, and it wasn't going to happen. And it didn't happen. And I lost a lot of jobs because I was not doing what I was asked to do, what I said I would do. And it was my paradigm was my problem. And you know, paradigm is the problem in everything we do. The knowing-doing gap is miles apart. There are millions, billions, I've already mentioned 60 billion, just in North America, on training, on helping people know more, but not on doing. We've got to begin to focus on the paradigm. We've got to help people understand why they're doing what they're doing and how to change what they're doing. And when we do that, everything starts to change. So to see, as we get into understanding goals, as we get into understanding self-image, as we get into understanding cybernetics, because the mind is something like a thermostat. It's set. It controls the temperature of our life. That's the paradigm again. The way it's set dictates the results we're going to get. And if we want to change the results, we've got to change the setting. How do we do that? We take some of the ideas that are controlling the behavior out of the paradigm and we replace them with other ideas. Now the trick is, how do you do that? And that is what the self-image lesson is all about. How does a person change the image they have of themselves? Because that is part of the paradigm. That's what's controlling the behavior. And as we get into that, the whole world starts to change. You're going to love, absolutely love, every module in this program. Thinking into results is without question the most powerful corporate transformational program you will find anywhere in the world. I've often mentioned I've got license to brag about all these ideas because none of them are mine. I have just been a very curious guy, a guy that saw a dramatic change in his own life, and I just had to know why. And so for the past half century almost now, I've been gathering the information, and I'm really enthused about sharing it with you. It's Bob Proctor. Thank you.
I trust you're starting to see the power of your mind and the effect that your thoughts have on your results. And not just the thoughts in your conscious mind, but more importantly, the thoughts deep in your subconscious mind. We're starting to learn now about the role of paradigms in both our personal and our professional life. And understanding this is critical to understanding why we all get so frustrated at times. It's because of this gap between what we know and what we do. And that gap is caused by unseen thoughts in your subconscious mind. So if you're not getting the results that you want, it's because your paradigms are controlling your behavior. Change the paradigm, change the results. What is the gap between what you know you should do in a situation and what you're doing? What is your knowing-doing gap? Take time with the exercises in your participants' guide because they will open your eyes to why you do what you do and help you change your behavior for the positive results you're looking for. Now, it's going to take some effort and a bit of vulnerability too, but go ahead, give it a try. I promise you, the reward will be big.